Welcome to Robert Bellissimo at the Movies, where we explore all things cinema. It's an honor to welcome James Naremore onto my show today, who is an emeritus chancellor's professor of communication and culture and English at Indiana University. He is the author of a number of books, including Acting in the Cinema, On Kubrick, The Magic World of Orson Welles, Some Versions of Cary Grant, Charles Burnett, A Cinema of Symbolic Knowledge, to name just a few. And today we're discussing More Than Night, film noir in its context. So, Jim, welcome. Thanks so much again for being here.
Thank you, Robert. It's fine.
I wanted
Great.
I wanted to ask. Well, before we start, I just wanted to say how much I enjoyed the book. I've loved film noir for such a long time, but I mean, you proved that it's certainly more than night with how broad it is and its roots in surrealism, everything with the all the various writers who wrote the novels. A lot of the movies are based on the photography, the performances, the directors. Yeah, I mean, if anyone's interested in film noir, it's a hell of a book, which not James, sorry, Jonathan Rosenbaum considers it the best film noir book. I was just curious to begin with, what was the inspiration behind wanting to write this?
Well, I don't know. It sometimes takes me a while to figure out what I want to do next. And I was thinking about doing a book about noir, and Laura Mulvey visited the campus here. And I told her, I'm thinking of doing a book about the film noir. And she said, "Oh, that's something that was invented by critics." And a light bulb went up off of my head, like in the cartoons. I said, "Yeah, it was invented by critics." And furthermore, I realized they were French critics because they gave it the name film noir. And so what I did was start out by trying to explore it as an idea and where it generated from and the sort of discourse around it. And the French became equated with a series of Hollywood movies after World War II. And they related those movies to films they already had that they called film noir. In fact, both the French and the Italians, for example, adapted James M. Cain before Hollywood got around to it. But anyway, they are responsible for it. And then I was out in L.A. and I had lunch with Peter Wallen, and I told him I was working on a book about film noir. And he said, "Oh, a film noir is anything that's listed in Board and Chamuton's
Right.
Panorama of American Film Noir." This is that book. I don't know if you know can I don't know if your viewers can see it.
Yeah, I could see it. I hadn't
Yeah,
heard it before you wrote about it in your book, so I'll have to read that as well.
yeah. Well, it's this is the book that sort of created everything around film noir.
Right.
And Board and Chamuton uh, did this panorama. It's published by City Lights Press, so I recommend it. So anyway, he's right because the easiest way to define noir is as a list. That's what
Yeah.
people always do. They give you a list of films that are noir, and it's a pretty interesting list. It turns out that a film noir is a dark and shadowy film, except when it's not, and it's a film in which guys wear trench coats, except when they don't. And it's a film that has a femme fatale, except when they don't. And you can just go right down the list. In fact, there's one of the films the French called noir isn't really a crime film. It's The Long Weekend with about an alcoholic. Uh,
Oh, the
and
lost. Yeah.
yeah, Lost Weekend. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, it's that amorphous quality of the thing that I started out exploring, and then it fell in place sort of like a poker hand. I knew just what I wanted to do. After that, I talked about the sort of modernist crime novel and how it influenced noir, and I talked about the politics, the budgets of the films,
Yeah.
the censorship rules, right on down the line. But every now and then I would zero in a particular film, and I tended to aim at the beating heart of what people call Hollywood noir.
So this because what I always have heard was that Nino Frank coined the term film noir, but it seems to me that that is not true because you were saying that the French have
Yeah.
been saying this since the 30s. So do you
Well,
know why
well,
people credit the film noir to him?
well, Nino Frank wrote an influential essay about it, one of
Right,
the earliest essays about it. So I don't, he did not, he didn't coin the term. It was a familiar term in France. So, yeah, he certainly got there first to write about it, among the first to write about it in France. But
hmm
he was not, he didn't invent the term. The term, the term, I guess, has its origins uh, in the roman noir, the noir novel, which is related to the even older to the Gothic novel. But also Gallimard, the big French publishing company, was doing a series of paperbacks called the Série Noire, and they were many of those were translations of American writers like Hammett and Chandler and so forth,
right.
and uh, all the best of them got translated, and so it was a very familiar thing. Um, so it has a long-standing tradition in France. So and so when Gordon Chamuton talked about the film noir, the French knew exactly what they were talking about.
I see. I see. And you said something really interesting also because a lot of people talk about how film noir, the look of film noir comes from German expressionism, but you talked in the book how you found it came more from street photography in the 40s. Can you talk a little bit about
Well, it comes partly from street photography in the 40s. Um, it has a quality of 40s ness, which can be seen in films that are not film noir in the period of the 40s, black and white films, and people associate it with a great deal of shadows. But
right.
uh, some of the best examples are one of some of the key examples of film noir are they're not exactly high key, but they're not really dark either. In a Lonely Place,
Yeah, I was just thinking.
it doesn't look that shadowy, and in fact, that film has the two what the French regard as the two icons of American film noir, Bogart and this is
Gloria, Grahame.
crazy,
Gloria,
Gloria Grahame.
yeah.
I'm an old man. You have to forgive me.
It's okay.
Yeah,
Back
but
you up.
anyway, it has the two, and Gloria Grahame is not a femme fatale in the movie.
No.
And anyway, so a lot of yeah, this is generally true about genres. Genres tend that word is connected to gender etymologically, and it's just fluid. You can have noir westerns, you can have noir musicals.
Right.
Anyway, yeah,
And everything, this general sort of because you wrote the book in the late 90s and it seems as though a lot of the things that people think like okay it's noir started after the war and things like that which you really prove isn't in the book isn't the case. Now is that why you decided to revise it and release it again in 2008 or part of the reason I mean
well, the book was it got a couple of awards and it was selling well for California. And they said, "Would you do a new edition of it?" And I said, "Yeah."
okay
That enabled me to write about more recent directors. I'm trying to remember who I wrote about. I know I wrote about David Lynch. I wrote about
yeah
Mulholland Drive, and I wrote about Michael Mann.
yes collateral
Yeah, Collateral. And anyway, I was just giving some examples of recent film noir I added to the book. I think that was the major addition to it.
yes, yes, and I mean this whole thing about scholars seem to have various points of views, but you show how noir never really ended, but
Yeah,
yet we have this period where it's often okay, 59 is or 58 is when the
yeah.
classic period ended, and then we move into what's called neo noir. Do you do you think that that's true, that it ends in 59, or is that like,
No, no, I certainly don't. The idea comes partly from Borden Chamuton, although Borden Chamuton put out a later edition of their book, and they called the first James Bond movie a film noir, Dr. No,
I,
which seems strange, but
yeah.
anyway. Uh, uh, but yeah, I've never liked the term neo noir. Uh, you don't need it because not they never stop making. There is a series of retro style movies that the best of them is Chinatown that began appearing in the 70s, and um, they're fine movies. Some of them are self-consciously pointing back to that earlier period, and they get described as neo noir. But is every movie made since the 70s a neo noir? I don't think so. So the term isn't useful to me. The only way it is useful is, excuse me, the French had the, the French, in addition to calling these things noir, they called the sort of pulp fiction crime novel the polar. And one of the greatest French writers, he's dead now, was a guy named Jean Patrick Manchetti, and he said that they needed to be a neo-polar, which was more aware of contemporary social conditions. And he wrote some remarkable books. A lot of them were influenced by Guy Debord. I don't know if you know who he was. He was a famous,
Rings a
uh,
bell. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Debord even had one of his big manifestations was called the Naked City, which is,
Oh yeah.
yeah. Anyway, Manchetti, I recommend his writing to anybody. The guy cannot write a bad sentence, and he translated a lot of major American crime writers, um, and he called his work the neo-polar. I'll accept that with him, but I don't think there's anything really neo about what people commonly call neo noir.
Mm. Do you know why there's this emphasis to separate the two from when this?
It comes from critics. I mean, it's a term coined. There's now something called the neo western,
Right.
and I, you know, people. I shouldn't complain about it. I'm a former English prof, and language. I know language changes. So, but
Right.
I just always felt like it was unnecessary.
Mm.
They
Mm.
continued to make noir movies after
Yeah.
1958.
Yeah. And you said something really interesting because if we look at once more and more movies became color in the 60s and 70s, because you talked about Gordon Parks' Superfly. You said it helped to establish a visual style for American neo noir. Would you say that in the 60s the style was perhaps less gritty? Was there a consistent style? Because in the 70s it got darker and really, you look at Scorsese and Chinatown, like you were saying,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
was there a consistent style in the 60s that was different for you?
Yeah, I think what happens with all of movie history that new technology leads to changes in style and like new costuming, new uh, fashion. Uh, uh, I'm trying to think of a good example, but it was it Robert Aldrich made a movie with Burt Reynolds called The Hustle or something like that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it's something like
yeah,
that. It's on the tip of my tongue.
yeah, and it you can call it a film noir. It sort of reeks of 60s ness. I don't know how to explain it. What I mean by that is they invent the zoom lens. They use the new zoom lens. It's more flexible. They're using more of that. There's a wide screen. There's because it's color. There's more. It's not high key lighting exact, but there's less emphasis on cast shadow.
Right.
So anyway, that there that happens. Yeah,
Mhm. And now you talk about how noir is impossible to define, even though people
yeah.
try to define it. But are there at least elements of a movie that you would need to see in a film for you to consider it film noir, or is it more of a gut feeling? Or
Uh, what about you? I'm curious. What do you think?
well, it can be hard to put into words, but I think certainly when characters are doing something wrong, but they do it anyways.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a big thing for me. And then, of course, the photography, greed is a big thing. People obsessed with
Thematic stuff.
money.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Crime.
yeah, having no feeling for one another.
Yeah, yeah.
Things,
Yeah.
things like
I
that.
sort of,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, I accept that. I, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that I don't think that okay, you can call film noir a category, but categories don't have necessary and sufficient characteristics. In other words, you can't list five things or even three things that the film noir has to have.
Right, of course.
Uh,
Yeah.
what it is a kind of central core of films that people recognize as noir, and then kind of radiates out from that. And subsequent films are associated with those core films in a variety of ways. I don't, that's the best way I would explain. And I think pretty much all genres work that way. So I would hesitate to call it a movement because I don't think any of the directors and the famous directors in the 1940s who made film noir, Huston, Dassin, Losey, I don't think those people even thought of the term
Right, right, of
film
course.
noir, and they didn't think of themselves as part of a movement. I
Right.
do think that a lot of those folks were left wing, and that in the 50s, with the rise of McCarthyism, uh, film noir took a kind of a social turn that it hadn't done before. And there, a lot of those people, some of those people got blacklisted,
Yeah.
but there's more of an emphasis on social criticism in the 50s than there had been, and you could
Yeah.
call that a movement if you like. But I hesitate.
I see. And you not too long ago wrote film noir a very short introduction. Uh,
Yeah,
what made you want to do another noir book?
nothing. I didn't want to. The Oxford called me up and said, "We'd like you to write one of our very short introductions about film noir."
Oh, I
And I
see
said,
that.
"I can't." I said, "Oh, I can't do that. I've already said everything I can think to say about it." And they said, "Oh, don't worry. That's what all of them do. I mean, they pick out people who've written about a subject, and you can't help but repeat yourself. What
I
you're trying to do, but what you're trying to do is simply condense
I see.
your arguments into a small space." So,
I
yeah.
see. Okay, so it's more of a summing up of more than
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever read one of those books. You can go into a bookstore and find they're on everything. They're on
yeah,
weather. They're on, yeah, yeah,
yeah. Oh, I see. Okay. Oh,
yeah,
interesting. Now, like I said, you revised it in 2008, and you there's a
yeah,
lot of recent noir movies. You just what people would call neo noir, I guess, movies that you
yeah.
talk about. So that was 2008, and here we are, 2015. Are there films that you've seen in the last 10 years, noirs that you quite like or would recommend?
Oh God, I was afraid you were going to ask me that question because I can't think. I can't help me out here. Name some films that you
Well,
think.
there was one called Emily the Criminal. I don't know if you saw that.
Called what?
Emily the Criminal with Audrey
No,
Close.
I haven't seen that. No.
Very, very good. Yeah, but
Oh
it's
yeah.
because she turns to crime and it's relevant because she's in the student debt she has, which of
I
course is
see.
a problem in America and here in
Sure.
Canada as well. And so but she already has a criminal instinct within her,
Right.
her past, but she's in so much
Yeah.
debt and she's so desperate that she turns to
Yeah.
crime. It's very
There's a lot of stuff on TV now in the streaming age
right.
that I would categorize as noir. That and a lot of it is foreign, um, but it dates back pretty far. There's this British series called Cracker with Robbie Coltrane,
Oh,
who
I heard
plays
about that. Yeah.
who plays a police psychologist and whose life is a total mess. He's a big drinker and chain smoker, but anyway, he's a psychologist who deals with criminals, and I would call that noir. Uh, Maybe also Prime Suspect. But I could name a half a dozen if I thought about it a little more on TV that I think are just as good, if not better, than the low budget noirs that were turned out by the dozen in the 40s and 50s.
Oh wow, okay. Then those are TV shows. Those
Yeah,
TV
yeah.
shows.
They're streaming. They're not network shows. They're
Yeah,
old network shows, I guess you could say. But yeah, yeah,
find on a streamer. I see.
yeah.
Okay, I'll have to check those out. And I hate to put you on the spot again about naming some things, but are there like just a few from the what people call the classic period that you love? I know you certainly seem fond of Out of the Past and movies like that. Are there a few that stick out in your
Well,
mind?
yeah. Out of the Past is one of my favorites, and I've never gone out of my fascination with the Maltese Falcon, which I
Yeah,
can watch again and again.
right.
Um, and uh, they're showing just today on Turner. They're showing uh, what is it? It's a John Sturges movie with Ricardo Montalban, and set in Boston. But anyway, John Alton was the photographer for it. And I can watch those movies over and over again. Anything that John Alton was the photographer for.
Okay.
Uh,
Well,
Mystery Street, that's what it's called.
oh, Mystery Street.
Yeah.
Okay. You know what? I haven't seen that one. 1950, I believe. Just Googling it quickly. Uh, yes, that's right. Yeah. Okay. I'll have to put that on my list. Fantastic. Well, are there any books you're working on these days? Do you have any
Yeah, I actually I just finished well, there is that Sticking Place book that you mentioned.
right.
Uh, but I just finished a book with collaborated with my wife. I've never collaborated with anybody before, but it's about and it's a departure for me. It's about a British, not British, Portuguese director, Pedro Costa. I don't know if
Oh
you've ever
yeah.
seen it.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Anyway, I'm a great admirer of his films, and so we've written a book about him, and it should
Oh,
be
great.
out in July, I think. And so I was very pleased to do that. She is a professor of Portuguese and has written a great deal about the literature, culture, and films of both Brazil and Portugal. So it was helpful from that aspect to work with her on the book. So we did that, and then I don't know if I'm going to write another book. I have an essay that I'm supposed to do. The Cinémathèque Française asked me for a series that an event they're going to stage for the catalog or whatever you call it for that to write an essay about Marilyn Monroe,
Yeah,
and which is a challenge.
yeah.
But I'm gonna do that. I'm thinking about that right now. Yeah,
Oh, great. Fantastic. Well, again, the book
and
is called,
she's in a noir as well.
yeah,
Niagara's
Niagara. Yeah,
yeah.
Don't Bother to Knock.
Yeah. I guess you could call it a noir. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. She's always wonderful. Again, the book, if you love noir, the book is called More Than Night, Film Noir in its Contexts. So, Jim, thanks again. This was a real
Oh,
treat.
sure. It was
Real
pleasant. I hope somebody learned something from it.
Oh,
We'll see.
sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I actually just recently got your Kubrick book. So,
Oh, yeah.
uh,
That's the first edition. There's a later one.
oh, is that right? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
found it online and I jumped at it.
Yeah.
So, I'll have to have you back sometime down the road if you're interested. We'll talk some more.
Sure. Yeah. This is fun.
Yeah, it certainly was. So, thank you again. And for those of you watching, thanks so much for watching. I want to thank all of my members on Patreon. If you're interested in becoming a member of my Patreon, head over to the link patreon.com/Robert Bellissimo at the movies for full details. You can also leave a donation or what I call a tip by clicking the thanks link, which you will find directly below the video frame. Just click on that and you can leave a donation if you choose to. Of course, I would greatly appreciate that. And lastly, if this is your first time here, please consider subscribing. It is absolutely free to do so. By pressing the Robert Bellissimo at the Movie logo, you will see it floating above my head in the top left corner to your top left. In just a second, just click on that. And then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I release one of my new videos. I would also really appreciate if you leave a comment, share the video, like the video. All of these things create traction onto my YouTube channel and really help share the video far and wide and the channel in general. So thank you so much for doing that, and I will see you all in the next one.